Today on Online for Authors, I'm chatting with Kathleen Goggin, author of 10 Little Rules When Good Jobs Go Bad. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to have you with us today. Before we really get into things, why don't you give listeners a quick idea of what they're going to find when they open up 10 Little Rules When Good Jobs Go Bad?
Sure. It's high level. It's a book about the difficult career decisions that we all have to make, how it really shapes who you are, what you do, and how you live your life. I would call this a memoir with a message. It's 10 little stories that are from my career experience and the way that I created my own rules to succeed. And at the end of each of the chapters is a guided journaling experience that allows the readers to make their own rules and to find their own way.
And I love that about the whole 10 Little Rules series is it isn't, hey, we have the best 10 rules. It's here are things that I have found. You're welcome to use mine. You're welcome to use some of mine. You're welcome to use none of mine. But what I really hope you do is find your own. And
Exactly.
I love that premise. It isn't, I know it and you don't.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up because for me, this book really came about because of all the people that I've worked with and, friends, neighbors, family who were always trying to seek me out as a trusted confidant to really talk about their career in real terms in an honest way. And they wanted an honest representation of what it's really like. Not
Yeah.
so much what you would read online or the top 10 things to succeed, but what it's like when the rubber meets the road.
Right. Right. The title, When Good Jobs Go Bad. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, how that title came around and why you think that it really talks about the book, the rules that you've written.
Sure. I think the bottom line there is that we always take jobs assuming that they're good.
Right.
And they usually are, right? I've had so many great jobs, and I mention those in the book, and so many great bosses. But the thing is, every job has a change cycle, right? Every job is going to eventually change. And it could be because of the situation. It could be the boss. It could be the corporation. It could be your coworkers, all of those reasons. Or it could be you. It could be that you're
Right.
changing. And
Right.
so those good jobs go bad in a very natural way sometimes. And we thought that was a great title for the book to really capture that cycle. And then the subtitle is to grow and learn and reclaim your power at work and in life, because that's what the takeaway is in terms of how it can really help the reader.
Right. Is this a book you wish you had had early in your career?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I describe my career, as someone who grew up at work.
Right.
I
Right.
started very early, 15 years old, and it just wasn't a very pretty process. It wasn't, it wasn't something that was very clear. And I was always trying to make it that way. I was always trying to straighten it out and make it a straight line and pull it into some sort of shape. And the reality is it wasn't like that at all. It was a patchwork quilt.
Well, and I think too, which is going to come up with a question that I have. As a woman, sometimes our priorities are different at different points in our life. When our children are little, at one point, I know your husband had an illness, and those things really affect what we want to put into a job versus what we want to put into at home. So sometimes for women, I think that the journey is even different because it might be forward, 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 back, back, back for a while, maybe sideways for a little while before we say, okay, we're ready to move forward again.
Absolutely. I agree completely. And I think that there are two good points in the book about that. And that is that you bring your whole self to the office, right? You
Right.
bring your life and your history and your background and your your family and
Right.
everything that's happening in your particular life phase as well. And I do think that you're hitting something on the head there with women in the office as well. I do think we are expected to be super flexible and super women often.
Right.
And I do think it is okay to perhaps take a lateral move. And I describe that as one of the rules, which I had to do when my husband was very ill. And I describe that in the book as well.
Yeah, and I think that normalizing that and making that okay for men and women to say that there are times in your life where it's okay not to be shoving forward. It's perfectly acceptable to tread water for a while or to take a position that maybe even goes backward a little bit, but provides you something else that you need, like time or
Right.
space, right?
Right, right, and I liken it to a tree that, it in some cases, the tree needs to grow laterally and strengthen those roots in order
Right.
to then, grow vertically again.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm curious, what is your favorite rule of your 10? Like if you
Well,
could only talk about one rule, I only gave you one out of your 10, which one are you discussing?
I would say bet on yourself, rule number 9. That was the real game changer for me when I decided to leave the security of my contracting world and really become much more of an independent.
Yeah. Okay. So explain for our listeners a little more. Bet on yourself. What are you suggesting to people when you say that?
Well, in my case, I was in a very, secure job with a lot of stability. I had reached the peak of my career within the organization. I was at the top level, and I was working with an incredible boss who I loved and taught me a lot. And I was really enjoying it, but it was also the nature of jobs as they change and the nature of these things. It was underfunded and understaffed, and I worked a lot of overtime and that sort of thing. And at the same time, I was growing older, right? I was maturing, and I was in an empty nest situation. We were changing our lifestyle a bit, and that was creating a little bit more freedom, a little bit more financial freedom. And I started to really wonder and think to myself, wow, what would it be like if I took all my knowledge, skills, and abilities and actually applied it towards something I really care about?
Yeah.
And so that sort of got me thinking about maybe some sort of work that would be a bit more independent, and maybe the management position that I was sort of daydreaming about wasn't within my organization. Maybe it was a management position for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's interesting, that idea of, sometimes it's okay to say that what you want is okay. And that you're not only is it okay, but you're capable of it.
Right. And there, of course I did my due diligence and spoke to my mentor about it. I had a, professional coach that I was speaking to about it. I went to a career boot camp. I tried to journal about it. I tried to apply all the techniques that I use for decision making and trying to move on and really accept that level of risk of
Right.
um, accepting the level of risk to say, okay, if I really did bet on myself at this point in my life, what is it that I want? What am I willing to do? And what am I willing to sacrifice? That's the framework that I share with
Right.
readers, because it's that last part that you always have to really consider is, okay, what else am I willing to give up to make this happen?
Right.
And I was really glad that I did, and that, of course, then led me to this independent book writing as well.
Right. Right. It's amazing how each change that you made or that anyone makes leads to a whole different set of opportunities that open up. If you had taken a right instead of a left somewhere, you would have still had opportunities, but they would have been a different set of opportunities. And this book may have never come out had you stayed with something else or looked for a different management position. So it is interesting to me in life how that is. It's not that turning one way or the other eliminates opportunity. It's that it just changes which ones are going to pop up for you.
Exactly. Yeah, the
Right?
50% rule, right? You're
Yeah.
worried, you are so worried about this 50% and you're not considering the positive
Right.
50%.
Exactly. Exactly. My favorite rule, actually, I liked number 6, which was leverage boredom. And
Ah,
I liked the idea that, first of all, it's okay to feel bored.
mhm,
And that sometimes, in fact, I read an article the other day about children and boredom, which I really loved, which is that when children are bored, they get creative. That if
mhm.
you let them be bored, all of a sudden you will see them doing things like creating a play, or um, doing art, or they're out in the backyard pretending to be paleontologists, or they're doing something different than just, constantly staying busy because they had to use their brain. And it's the same thing, I think, in this idea, which is, if you're bored, what are you going to do with that? And
Exactly.
you talked about that you took a course, I think a technical writing course or something, which kind of turned where you were going next. And I think that we all have that opportunity. Like if you had time, what would you do? And if you're bored at work, what would you do? Like, what,
Exactly.
is it something within your organization that if you took a course, you'd now be available to do something new in your organization? Or do you think maybe that organization over there looks better, but you need a course to do that? You know?
Exactly, and, that's great that you enjoyed that one. That's one of my favorite rules as well, because I was in a great job, again, with a great client in a wonderful, organization, and I was doing, work that had meaning for me. But I did start to get bored. I mastered it pretty quickly, and I was in the same boat that, everyone else finds themselves in. And, I it's one of those things that I share with my sons all the time. I say, "If you're in neutral, if you feel you're in neutral, your job, career search is in neutral, be in school."
Yeah.
That's the big message. But yes, take a course, do informational interviewing, take the time to really learn about the next step, what you want to consider. All of those things were really, really helpful to me as well.
Yeah. I just found that to be a very, very valuable, that you essentially use that boredom,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
go with it. If you were bored now, you're not going to get less bored 2 years from now, right?
exactly.
If the job is boring today, it's going to be boring in 2 years. So what is it that you want to do to change that?
Exactly, and I think that you're also touching on something that is, mentioned throughout the book, and that is just basically ownership.
Yeah.
So you're bored, so what? So what are you going to do about it?
Right. Right. And sometimes it's okay to be bored.
Mhm.
Maybe you took the job knowing that you were going to be bored, but this is what you need in your life right now because you don't have the bandwidth in your brain to give much more than this. And so you're fine with it. Or maybe you're not. And you have to determine, are you okay with the boredom? And if not, then what are you going to do about that? You know?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and I think that ownership is kind of what a lot of workers try to avoid, right? Because it's a lot easier to just complain to your friends and your
Yeah.
family and to
Yeah. Blame it on the
constantly
boss, or,
right, blame it on the boss or, find some, long list of excuses and that sort of thing, and I do feel like that is the story arc within the book, which is, really owning all of these issues and finding positive solutions for
right.
myself and my family.
Right. The other thing I really liked was how you would say, I took a job fully believing it was going to be the right job. And sometimes I found out quickly that it wasn't. And sometimes it took me longer, or sometimes it was the right job and then it didn't stay the right job. But even the one that you took, that you were sure it was the right one, and very quickly you realized, oh, I don't like what I'm doing. This is a bad, and that it's okay. It's okay to have made a decision and then regret it and figure out a way out of it.
Exactly, exactly, and I say in the book, perfect job for me might not be the same for you.
Exactly.
It's very subjective. And I think the job that you're describing that was so difficult that I realized so quickly was not for me. I'm pretty sure my successor is still there.
Yeah.
so so
Yeah.
she loved it, right? And I quickly realized that it was a bad fit for me.
Right. And I think that we need to give ourselves permission to recognize that we didn't make a good choice. And it isn't because we're bad individuals. It's simply maybe we didn't have all the information, or maybe the information that was given to us through rose colored glasses. And when we got there, we left our glasses at home. And, okay, it does look good on paper, but in reality, I'm doing way more of this. And that's the thing I like doing the least.
Exactly.
Right.
Wow. You're really hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I just that to me, I saw that over and over in the book, and it was like I loved that. I feel like you're giving people permission to admit that this is not a good fit, and then do
Abs-
something about it.
yes,
Instead of
absolutely.
instead of doing what my mother always said, which is, you made your bed, so now lie in it. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, like you picked out a bed, but you don't have to keep that one. There are other beds.
Exactly. I love that story. And you're really
Yeah,
describing how you were listening to your mom's rules early on and then
right,
you made your own.
right,
Exactly. And
right. Where you
that's
just
the essence
sometimes
of the
have to,
book.
yeah, sometimes in life you just have to say, yeah, it isn't, yeah, I made a mistake. Like, this is not for me. And I think sometimes maybe we believe things about ourselves, like, this is what I'm supposed to do next.
Exactly.
On my list of things, this is where I would go next. And you go there and you realize, oh, this is a bad fit. This is a bad fit. I remember, I mean, all the way back in college, making it a decision about what degree I was going to get. And I took my first semester and I hated every class I was taking, all of them. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because if I don't like the classes, I'm not going to like the job.
Exactly.
Right. So it's that kind of thing. I knew what I wanted to do when I got to college. Four
Right.
majors later, you know.
I hear you. I hear you. And I'm hearing you also describe the self-awareness.
Yeah.
That's really what the career journey is about, right? It's like I said, I was naive and I was not very mature when I started, and I felt like every job was another stepping stone to more
Right.
self-awareness and more, not only more work experience, but more life experience.
Right, right. And I like the idea too that sometimes our journeys, and I say this in my 10 rules as well, that sometimes our journeys we think are going to be from point A to point B, and it's this nice, smooth, straight line all the way through, and that everything you do is leading to point B, when in reality it looks more like a knot, you know,
Exactly.
just all tangled up, and and eventually you get to B, but how you got there is not that pretty smooth line that you had envisioned when you got started.
Right.
So,
And I think a lot of these, the online world is always sort of creating a listicle, right? An article that's a
right,
list of things that's going to solve your problem. And,
right. You do these 10 things and you get this beautiful outcome, right?
no, that's not what our reality is like at all. That's right.
Right. And in work and in a lot of areas of our life, it's not that easy. And I love lists, and I love to be able to follow lists. And I very much want to do the 10 things on the list and get the outcome. And inevitably, it doesn't work that way. And I should know that by now, but yet I still find myself making that list and thinking, and now I'll get point B. And it's like, it just doesn't work that way. As a woman, you wrote this book very much from your perspective and your life. Do you feel this book is aimed more at women, or do you think that it goes well across both I almost said genres, genders?
I think it does apply to men, especially nowadays. I think that there are a lot of men who are also making difficult career decisions, and they'll see themselves in these stories. I
Yes.
purposely wrote them in a way that would be at a high level, that would appeal to the widest audience.
Right.
and to make it easy to read and easy to understand. I have had really great feedback from male writers and male reviewers, so I
Fantastic.
do feel like I'm on the right track with that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I did too. I was just wondering, like, when you got started, were at the very beginning, first concept, did you think I'm writing for anyone out there who's got a bad job, or did you have a particular niche of an audience in mind when you wrote, or when you first contemplated?
Sure. We originally the book came about because I was looking back at my career choices and my resume and planning for retirement thoughts and that sort of thing. And I thought, and I talked to Carol, and I thought, wow, there's a real cast of characters here. And there are a lot of situations that I think could help a lot of people, because these
Right.
same stories are the ones that I had used to help and mentor and listen to other people along the way. So, yes, exactly. I originally thought, okay, this is going to be 10 little rules to survive bad jobs. Or, she was immediately flipping that to say, no, how about thrive in bad jobs?
Right. Right.
And then we thought about it. And as we really fleshed it out and talked through it, it was clear that, like we said, not every job is bad. And the examples that I had often started from a really great
Really
place.
great place. Right. that
Yeah,
that you grew out of, or your boss changed, or funding changed, or your time constraints changed, or something, because our life is not static, and what we think we want to do at one point doesn't necessarily follow through for later, you know.
exactly. Exactly. But I have to tell you that I've had the time of my life writing this book. It
Yeah.
was an absolute pleasure and so much fun. So much fun.
There's a lot of joy, I think, about having a creative idea and being able to figure out how to get it out on paper in a way that allows other people to get something from it. And then I know that for me, I write fiction. And when someone reads something and they say, "Oh, when I read this particular part and it just touched my heart," it's like, "Oh, yeah, you've made my entire writing experience." That's because that's what you're wanting. And for you, I'm sure it's similar. What you're wanting is for someone to say that one story you told,
Hmm.
it meant so much to me because it made me see something in my own life, or it gave me the strength to do what I knew I needed to do, or it got me thinking, and now I know where I want to go next. And those are the kind of comments I think that just make writing an awesome experience.
Absolutely. And I have had that feedback, and it does, make me feel like I achieved my goal, which was to have writing that had impact and that would help
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So I feel really, really good about that. And I do want to say that in terms of the writing process, I did originally think that it was just going to be 10 essays. I thought, well, okay, it's going to be 10 standalone essays.
Right.
But then the more that we fleshed it out and the more that we talked it through, it was clear to me that it was really important to have the story structure in each of the stories, that there should be a setting, there should be, what did I want, what did I get, what was the
Right.
obstacle, what did I overcome, what was the lesson learned. And then those 10 stories had to form its own story arc as well. So
Right.
I have to say, my biggest thrill so far is getting feedback from folks who are far outside the Washington, D.C. Beltway and across the country, who these stories resonate with them as well. And we worked really hard to make sure that they appealed to a wide audience, and that it was
Exactly.
quick and easy to read, because each story is about the size, about the length of a blog post.
Right. And so I read it. Now, I did not sit and do all of the journaling part of it because I just don't have the time to sit right now and do that. But I read it. You can read it very quickly. If you're just reading it to read it, it's very quick. But I loved the journaling questions at the end, because even though I didn't take the time to sit and write, I did contemplate. And every now and then I still find my mind going back to it. And I'm not really at a point in my life where I need this book. I'm working independently. I tell everyone that I'm semi-retired, and what that means is that I still do tons and tons and tons, but I do what I want. like I'm still writing, I'm still podcasting, I'm doing all of my things, but it's under my umbrella where nobody tells me what to do and I decide. And that works for me. So I'm not in this field anymore, this space, but I think about my children, and it's like, oh, wow, this is a book they need to get because they're at that point where they're making these decisions. They're getting out of college and they're getting started on these jobs and like, is this the right fit for you? And does it work for you? And it's okay to say no and move on. Like, you don't have to say, oh, well, I picked this and now I feel bad because I picked wrong. So I'm just going to sit here and suffer. You don't have to do that.
That's right. I mean,
right?
the game has changed drastically, and the amount of loyalty that you give to the organization is proportional to the amount of loyalty they give you, right?
Well, and the 30 years in a gold watch thing is pretty much gone.
Exactly.
It's no longer what people do. There are very few people who start in a company and end in that company for retirement. Even if you found a good fit in that company, eventually something's going to happen where what they have to offer you isn't as good as what someone else has to offer you. And I think people are more in tune with what they want as opposed to, am I a good company man?
I agree completely. And you have to be your own business. You have to think of yourself as your own business.
Exactly.
And of course, on the other side of it, the organizations, they need to be the classy organization that they know you will depart from and that you will speak highly of them.
Exactly.
That is their real goal nowadays.
Right. Well, and when you look at it, you spoke so highly of all the different organizations that you were in. Right? You never said, oh, this one was horrible. You felt good about where you were and the things that you did there. And you're right. That's what they want in the end, is for anyone who's ever worked for them to say this was a good company. And I would highly recommend it to someone else.
That's right.
I've got a question. You had 10 rules. Was there an 11th you didn't get to put in?
Well, there were certainly stories and jobs that didn't get included. The one that comes to mind is early in my career, I had a boss who went to lunch and never came back. Every day. he would go to lunch and he would go to a bar, and that's where he would finish his day. And if we had something that came up earlier in the day or later in the afternoon, we would have to go to the bar and get the answer or get the signature. Exactly. And I thought, well, that story is a little bit extreme from an earlier time. And so maybe that one's not as relevant today.
But what a great story. In fact, that would almost be a good story starter. Like if you were doing a presentation of some kind, it would be a great one to throw out there. Do you have something that you're doing next? Like, is this it? Are you never writing again? Or have you decided, oh, wait, I really like this and I'm going to do more?
Well, I have to say I had the time of my life writing this. I really enjoyed it and I'm really ready to do more. I can't wait to dive in. I think I'm really partial to the memoir writing. I read memoirs. I'm writing it. I just am really attracted to that. And I think you noticed early in the book, there was a reference to my husband's health and how that impacted a lot of my career decisions. And then later in the book, in chapter 10, I mentioned that both my husband and I are facing serious health concerns. And so I think that my next project is going to be about that, about health and what it's like when both spouses are facing something very serious and how to navigate that. And I'm still working on it, but I do think that it's yet another project I hope will help a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I understand that. My husband has brain cancer, and so we're dealing with that whole aspect. And I often think to myself, what would we do if I were ill? What would we do? Like, I tripped the other day. I didn't hurt myself. I didn't even fall down, but what went through my mind, you know, how you'd like catch your toe and you kind of like go forward. And my thought when I caught myself and was fine was, what if I had fallen? What if I had broken a leg?
I understand completely. I
Then what
really
do we
do.
do, right? Like,
I
you get that fear of, oh my gosh, I have to stay healthy. I have to be.
it's
Yeah.
really a serious challenge and, something
Yeah.
that we're negotiating now and trying to create our own tips and tricks to,
Yeah.
move forward.
I
Exactly.
think that that's a very beneficial book. I hope you get it out right away.
Thank you.
So get right on it, Kate.
Thank you.
Got it?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So, guys, if you want to keep this conversation going, then you need to head right on over to the Novels and Latte Book Club on Facebook. I will have the show notes down, the link down in the show notes. As a member of this amazing group, you're going to have the opportunity to win a copy of Kate's book, 10 Little Rules when good jobs go bad. So, head right on over, and what you have to do is listen and tell me what you learned or liked from this show. Kate, if someone wanted to get up with you and talk with you about your 10 little rules or your experiences with jobs, or wanted to in some way like link up and hook up with you, how do they do that?
Sure. My website is kategoggin.net. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And you can always find me under Kate Goggin or Goggin Kate. Sometimes it's the other way
Right.
around.
Okay. And once again, I'll have all those links in the show notes as well. Kate, I want to thank you so much for being with me today. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really enjoyed getting to know you better.
Oh, I so appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much. And I look forward to reading your 10 little rules as well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.